Of the Rhinbeck Town Planning Board to order. The first order of business is confirmation of the meeting agenda. We have one issue on our agenda tonight, and that is to address different procedural issues with the Mr. Duffy's applications before us. I would like to get a motion to accept Art's meeting notes.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
We have extra copies up here. Joni does, for anyone who would like copies of the meeting notes. We'd be more than happy to share them with you. I trust that you've all been able to read the March 3 minutes.
Yes. Yes.
And I'd like a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, amendment, alterations, changes, anything missing? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Okay, I do have a bit of an announcement to make. On the Blackwood application before both the Planning Board and the ZBA, I've spoken with John Lyons, and the area variance that the ZBA is considering is type 2 under seeker, whereas what we're doing is type 1. Therefore, the ZBA is in a position to act when it's good and ready. They don't have to wait on us. On the other hand, they asked us for a recommendation. Because I have just learned that it is indeed type 2, not type 1, as I thought it was, I know we're not prepared tonight to discuss this. The ZBA will be discussing it Wednesday night. We certainly can discuss it after we conclude tonight's activities if you want to. Every planning board member also has the full right to go and speak whatever opinion they wish to give to the ZBA Wednesday night when they will be discussing that. The public hearing will be open for the Blackwood application for the area variance. If after we complete our actual agenda items for this evening, if anyone wants to sit and discuss a recommendation from the board as a whole, we can do that. Otherwise, everyone is free to go and speak, if they choose to, before the ZBA as a planning board member, but as an individual, not as a recommendation from the planning board. Having said that, anyone else have anything they want to bring up? Does anyone kind of think maybe it's 6:35 somewhere? Close enough? Okay. We're here tonight. There are 4 items that we're going to do. Art's not going to be here tonight. He was on vacation. He said he would come if we needed him, and I said I'm sure we wouldn't. We'd be in good shape. So there are 4 items we're going to do tonight, and Art has provided, I think, everything we need. If anyone thinks something's missing, please let me know. We're going to be going over the full EAF, draft EAF Part 2 that Art has provided us with. We are going to be going over the coastal policies as set forth in the LWRP. I think you've all received both an initial consistency review and a revised consistency review was sent out today that I received by email. We are going to, I would hope tonight, be able to make a determination of significance, make our secret determination, and close the public hearing on this. And we'll also be making a recommendation to the ZBA considering the requested area variances for Mr. Duffy's project. And I would like to be in a position to have Art draft approval resolutions for the special use permits and site plan and wetland permit that constitute Mr. Duffy's applications for our meeting next Monday night, which is our regular meeting on July 21st. So, having said that, I will begin. I do have one piece of correspondence which I'll read into the record. It's from Astor Courts. Dear members of the board, we reside at Astor Courts at 189 River Road, Rhinbeck, New York. We are the neighboring property immediately to the south and contiguous to the property of Mr. Robert Duffy at 195 River Road and 31 Carmel Drive in Rhinbeck. We are writing to report on a resolution of our objections to and issues of concern relating to the project that we previously expressed to the board in our June 25th, 2014 letter and at the June 25th, 2014 Planning Board hearing. After a June 26th site visit to the Duffy property organized together with Mr. Trimble and Ms. Moore, we arrived at an agreement which addresses these specific issues, objections, and concerns, namely landscaping and screening, lighting, fire hydrant and safety concerns, and gate issues and location. Ms. Van Tile and the team of people working for Mr. Duffy have been responsive and helpful in resolving these issues. Based on the project before the board with the additional features presented tonight, we will have nothing further to say about the project to either the Planning Board or to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And signed with Kathleen Hammer. At this point, I guess what I will do is I will ask the applicant if there are additional, I know some things referenced in here, some things to bring to our attention.
We'd be happy to do that. We have a little handout that summarizes what was referred to in the letter from Astor Courts. And if everyone recalls, the last time we were here, we agreed to have a site visit the day after the last meeting. So that site visit was actually held on June 26th. of this year, and that site visit started some very good discussion between Mr. Duffy and Astor Courts next door relating to some of the issues of concern. And we have made some modifications which I think everyone will agree are for the good of the project as well as resolving the concerns of the neighbors. And the first one of those deals with the southern gate. If you'll remember, when you drive in the southern driveway, the two driveways come to a point where they split, where one would go to Astor Courts or turn north to go to Mr. Duffy's house. And you can see in your first handout, the first sheet you see is the color key plan, which you've seen many times before. But the second sheet in that handout shows visual simulation showing the existing circumstances on the driveway. And the second sheet of that shows what the gate was planned to look like when we first proposed it. So if you look at, the first sheet shows no gate, the second sheet shows where we had originally proposed it, and then the third sheet shows that we've agreed to move it to a point that's 120 feet, 5 feet north of where the driveways split. And that's a place where there's now located a no trespassing sign. It's at the top of the slope. That site works well for Mr. Duffy. It's visible to people who would visit his property, and at the same time it avoids any visual discontinuity in looking at the two gates. So we think that that is certainly within the discussions that we've had before the board, and that resolves a concern. The second issue that was discussed was the availability of screening during all 4 seasons of the year from Astor Courts viewing the property. And as everyone knows, there was a great deal of deer damage this winter for everyone. But that affected this property particularly because there were so many evergreen trees that were damaged. So what we did is we had our landscape consultant address how the landscape plan that we had could be beefed up. And the manner in which he's proposed to do that is to increase the planting size of many of the plants. And we've attached in this handout, the next thing you'll see is a description from our landscape architect as summarized by the architects, showing the place of the planting, which is the same as it always was, but we're proposing to add 2 very, very large trees, 30 feet high at the time of planting, and they're shown on the plan, and those themselves will substantially beef up the landscaping. And then we're also proposing to increase the size of other trees in a substantial amount, so that we're this way we will be assured even this fall at the time of planting of substantial bang for the buck for the planting that's being done. And Mr. Duffy has also agreed, there was a concern about the impact of some security lights on the existing barn 1 that are faced in an area where, of course, no one can control when security lights go on. They go on when the deer run by or whatever, but he has agreed to turn those lights off until the planting is done this fall, just to assure that this would not be an issue. So, and in addition to all of those things that affect the plan, the applicant and Astor Courts have reached an amicable agreement relating to access to fire hydrant services on their respective properties. So with respect to all of these things, we think that we're well within the spirit of the plan that was submitted, as well as the environmental review. Now, one very minor point has occurred. On July 4th, a stranger appeared at Mr. Duffy's property in the rear looking for the fireworks and nearly drove her car over the edge of Mr. Duffy's property on the south side of the terrace. As you remember from the site visit, we had, and from several previous meetings, He's proposed to put an antique metal fence on the north side of the terrace because that's where his daughter would be playing. And we had never considered that for the same distance and a balanced, brief distance south of the terrace, where the land is steeply sloped but is much more heavily vegetated. But in view of that circumstance, we're proposing to have the fence balanced on both sides. I think that doesn't create any visual or other issues that anyone would see, and is just like the other fence for safety purposes. And then the turnaround that we have previously described to the board would be fitted to that in a kind of a squarish shape to match the landscaping, avoid interference with any existing plants at the south of the gate. So with respect to the summarizing the plan, I don't want to belabor any of the points. I think the board has gone through these at great length. But I think that this plan was a good plan when it was submitted, but we really thank everyone for making it better. We think that the suggestions made by the board, by other agencies, and by the neighbors, and by the CAB have all made the plan better. We've made some things smaller. Barn 2 was substantially reduced in size. Its height was reduced in size. The accessory dwellings were changed to guest houses. Both barns are being refaced with native stone, and we're incorporating the restoration of the stone wall along River Road. Other items have been relocated to more benign locations, including the septic system and the southern gate. I think it's clear that this board has taken a very hard look at the environmental issues. I won't get into all of the environmental issues which have been addressed at length by the consultants, but just to highlight a couple items. The total square footage of the proposed additional structures on the Duffy property constitute less than, or approximately 1/10 of 1% of the total lot area. And so we believe that that is certainly not a significant size. In addition to that, the applicant has removed a 10,896 square feet convent, so that there's actually, by this project, a substantial net reduction in the overall impervious surfaces on the site. And that lot consolidation, which we're asking this board to approve, I think addresses directly one of the Conservation Advisory Board comments of today, and that is that there should be some mitigation looking to the future because of the substantiality of the variances being sought. Well, of course, no board can prejudge that no approvals would ever be issued in the future, but by incorporating that additional land in one lot, we of course subject the entire property to the regulations that the town has on what constitutes a single lot. The other thing that I just want to mention is the pool, because there were some concerns expressed by the CAB about the swimming pool. The swimming pool is a closed drainage system. It will not be discharging anywhere. It's been carefully designed also so that there will be no overflows from the pool. The pool has been designed with a 2,500 gallon surge. So that is the equivalent of if 150 people jumped into the pool at one time, which is certainly not ever going to happen, there still would be protection against an overflow. And the applicant also commits that if the pool is ever drained for any reason, that draining will take place by tanker trucks and will not be deposited. So with respect to all of the other issues, including the hillside and the cove, we certainly appreciate the town's concern with these important resources, and we think that we have submitted the site-specific studies to show that those resources will not be interfered with. And so I think, in closing, I'd just like to recall a letter that was submitted to the board back in April when we first started the public hearing process by Hudson River Heritage, who said that the retention of the tea house site for single-family residential use and the return of the former convent site to the same use is a positive development. While the integrity and historic value of the tea house itself was compromised by its previous owners, It appears that the new owner has affinity for what remains and proposes changes that would generally enhance the site without undue imposition on neighbors or additional damage to the landmark district. Our review of the application suggests that the new structures proposed are modest in scale, appropriate to an estate property, and located for the most part on the site of past structures, minimizing new impact on the site. The structures slated for replacement are not noted in the National Register nomination for the site, and so may be presumed non-contributing. So in summary, we thank the board for all of the work that it has done and for the cooperation of the other town agencies and the neighbors, and we ask that you move forward with seeker and consistency determination this evening.
Thank you. Questions from members of the board?
Just one.
Yes.
How were the fireworks? Unbelievable,
It is.
but not surprising.
Any comments from anyone, the public? Okay, what I'd like to do is, have you all had a chance to go over the EAF Part 2 that Art gave us a draft of?
Yes.
You all seen it? We can go over it again if you like. I think if anyone has any areas in here where they would disagree with Art's conclusions.
I think it's pretty well thought
I
out.
don't think we have anything that specific. It's very well done.
From my reading of it, there were no environmental issues that rose to the level of concern that would require us to do a Part 3, but that's my opinion. Any disagreement from members of the board?
No, I concur with the conclusion.
Everyone's okay with that? Okay, well then I have a resolution I would like to read, as soon as I find it. Oh, found it. Okay. The Town of Rhinbeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows in a matter involving applications to the Planning Board by Robert Duffy for special use permits and site plan review and approval under Town Code Chapter 125 zoning. Application to the Planning Board for subdivision plat approval under Town Code Chapter 101 subdivision of land. Application to the Planning Board for wetlands permit under Town Code Chapter 120 wetlands. An application to the Zoning Board of Appeals for area variances in the matter of the proposed single-family residential development of consolidated 44.096 acre parcel with site landscaping improvements, guest accommodations including 2 guest cottages, 1 detached accessory dwelling, and other accessory structures in the Historic Preservation HP 20 zoning district, the Hudson River Historic Landmarks District, the Estates District Scenic Area of Statewide Significance, and the Town of Rhinbeck Local Waterfront Revitalization Area, RWA. The proposed action being a type 1 action for which the Planning Board has issued a notice of intent to serve as lead agency under seeker. Accepts lead agency status under seeker. In its role as lead agency under seeker, determines upon review of the EAF Part 1 and its own completion of the annexed EAF Part 2, in consideration of the criteria for determining significance set forth at Title 6, Part 617.7c, NYCRR, the historic preservation policies underlying the historic district designation, and the pertinent coastal policies set forth in the town's LWRP. And at this point, I will simply ask, did anyone have any issues, find any inconsistencies with the LWRP policies, either through the advisory letter from the CAB, WAC, or from their own review of the LWRP and the coastal policies?
I guess the only thing that jumped out at me was a comment made about putting mitigation and making mitigation a factor, and I think that's completely out of line. I think that was already said. I think this applicant has jumped through many hoops. Done a wonderful job.
Yeah, I think the mitigation has been written into the site plan, into the special use permits. I think it has basically been covered. I don't think, I personally found absolutely no inconsistencies myself with the project that has now been developed. But I just want to, before I go any further, since this is one of the things we as a board have to make that determination, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. And I think we are. Alrighty then. That the proposed action as described in the applications and latest related submissions to the Planning Board and further in consideration of the area variances pending before the ZBA will cause no potential significant adverse impact on the environment and thus issues a negative declaration, determination of non-significance, deeming an environmental impact statement to not be required and stating such will not be prepared. Authorizes the chairman to so execute the full EAF and directs the Planning Board clerk to distribute and file the full EAF with negative declaration and annotation and other documentation as pertinent to a Type 1 action in the manner set forth within the Seeker Implementing Regulations, Title 6, Part 617.12 NYCRR, and in accordance with the format of the updated and recently issued Seeker form. 4. Further severally determines as otherwise incorporated within the above negative declaration and with due consideration of comments first offered by the town's Waterfront Advisory Committee and as subsequently reviewed by the chairman with the chairman of the town's Conservation Advisory Board, the proposed work and intended occupancy to be consistent with pertinent coastal policies as set forth within the town's LWRP. And for anyone who wants it, copies of this resolution are available. Joni has copies for anyone who would like it. Could I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll poll the board. Jesse?
Aye.
Melody?
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
Woody?
Aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So, could I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. And we have one more item we need to do here, and this is a recommendation to the ZBA on the area variances for Mr. Duffy's applications, and I'll read this to you and see what you all think. The Town of Rhinbeck Planning Board has reviewed upon referral the application for area variance submitted by Robert Duffy and finds as considered in its issuance of a negative declaration under seeker earlier, the several variances requested from the Town Code Chapter 125, Sections 125-27A3, 125-27A4, 125-68YY2, and 125-68E12 to raise no other significant planning, zoning, or environmental issues with respect to either the project, its site, or its environs. The Planning Board understands there to be the presence of practical difficulties cited in the application and recommends the ZBA rely upon its own study of the facts and decide this application in accordance with the criteria and procedures set forth in Town Code, Chapter 125, Sections 125 through 125-124, C and D. Could I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion, amendment, change? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, this recommendation will go to the ZBA. I've been asked to go to the ZBA meeting Wednesday night, and if there are any questions about our recommendation, I'll be more than happy to answer them on behalf of the planning board. With this, I think we've completed our agenda items for tonight. I want to thank everyone for coming. Everyone was very well behaved. This was very nice, peaceful. Thank you. It's much appreciated. I'm just going to ask the planning board if, because the interim zoning enforcement officer screwed up on the seeker for the Blackwood thing and thought it was type 1 for the ZBA, but for 1, 2, and 3 family homes, irregardless of type 1 or anything else, for other involved agencies, it's always type 2 for the ZBA. I know none of us were prepared tonight to discuss any recommendation to the ZBA on the Blackwood applications. And the ZBA is taking it up Wednesday night. I know they won't be acting Wednesday night. They'll be working with John Lyons on how they wish to proceed. If we feel comfortable as a board putting some sort of recommendation together, we can certainly do that. I would understand why none of us are prepared tonight to discuss that, since you didn't know that you might have to discuss it. But I think everyone should realize that as members of the planning board, you're also citizens of the town of Rhinbeck, and you are certainly free to express your own opinion at the ZBA public hearing. Certainly identify yourself as a member of the planning board, but you're speaking on behalf of your own position, so that no one gets the idea that anyone is speaking on behalf of the board, unless the board feels comfortable making a recommendation tonight to the ZBA on the Blackwood application for the area variance. And I leave that completely up to you guys.
Pass on it. I say we pass on it tonight. I don't think we're qualified to pass it.
Okay. I know one of the main...
Intelligently talk about it.
Yeah, one of the main things we were concerned about is a visual analysis, which wasn't going to be done because the ZBA didn't want one. And if the ZBA, for example, determined to turn down the variance, then there would be no application for us to consider. In which case, I didn't see any reason in asking the applicant to fund a visual analysis in the event that...
But if it gets through ZBA,
Then it
we
comes
want
back to us,
visual.
and we did approve doing a
We did
visual
approve that.
analysis if it gets to us in a manner that we could approve it, so...
Where does the ZBA meet in the town? Upstairs?
They meet upstairs, yeah, the Wednesday
At
night.
What time? 6:30?
They meet at 7:30, I think.
7:30?
Yeah, they meet late.
They respect the dinner hour, unlike some of us. So, okay, as you say, I will be at that meeting that night. I may have a few things on my own opinion to say, but I was speaking strictly as my individual self, not representing anything from the planning board. And I will make it very clear to the ZBA that the planning board did not feel it was in a position to make a recommendation on that variance as the planning board.
But you might want to share that we are on record as having voted at the last meeting to require a visual
Yes.
analysis should it come back to us.
Should it come back to us as something to approve.
So it's important that they understand that
Yeah.
we're prepared to ask for that.
Well, we did ask for it already, and
So I, not being here at the last meeting, under what section of our code are we authorized to impose something like that on an applicant? And what's to stop next month from two other neighbors saying, well, we want a visual analysis?
It's the same thing that allows us to do an environmental review, a wetland review, any of those things, any information we need. And it actually states in places in the law that a visual analysis may in fact be necessary for certain projects within the town. So we do have that authority. We are authorized to do that.
I guess I wouldn't characterize it as an imposition, I would characterize it as a...
It's an expense.
Of course, yes,
I
it
think the
is.
town should have the ability to say we're going to do a visual analysis, but it's a matter of cost.
As
Picking
are
up the
all of
tab.
the other studies.
Right, so if someone decides to put up a simple fence that's gonna cost them $3,500, and the neighbors just, all of a sudden they have to do a visual analysis, how much is that gonna cost? For the
Generally,
person who's
I'd
just
like
trying
to
put up a
think-
fence, that's all.
Look,
It's just,
I think the planning board has been pretty good at using, reason and deciding whether or not, we've never required anyone else in Rhinecliff to do a visual analysis for the projects that have come before us because they
Precisely.
haven't had the impact that this one does have. This one is in probably one of the most prominent areas in the hamlet. It's basically what the view of the river, the mountains, the whole 9 yards. So it is basically, in my opinion, an issue where you're suddenly going to be faced with a project that is going to have a visual impact on the community, on the scenic district, both from Grinnell Street as well as from the neighboring houses as
And
well
the
as from the river. So I feel in this case, we are justified in requesting that, and the planning board did vote to do so. We put it aside pending the ZBA action because we did not wish to have the applicant have to pay for something that may be of absolutely no use whatsoever, depending on what the ZBA does. And the ZBA said they did not want a visual analysis for what they were looking at. So,
okay, no, it's just that the last meeting I was at, we also discussed it, and we all decided that it was not necessary, and we moved on.
it was not necessary
So
at
I
this
missed the
point.
meeting, and somehow it came up again.
Richard, it was not necessary because until the ZBA acts, we don't know if we have an application before us for which their visual analysis would be of any use.
Well, the other thing is, at the meeting that you missed, there were a significant number of new people talking about their concerns about the visual analysis, so I think it kept rising.
I read all of the things, I watched all the footage.
Mhm.
I certainly don't agree with most of them, I don't mind saying that. I probably will come on Wednesday night as well. This is one big factor that I think just keeps being overlooked, and that is the bonus gained by taking 3 individual building lots that could have 3 separate homes on that river. And given the chance, a developer could walk in there and easily sell them. This person is willing to consolidate and in exchange, make a bigger footprint.
Well, the problem with that is, in my opinion, and granted it's my opinion, is that the way the law is written, it is to discourage that. That by law, they can put 3 houses there of 2,300 square feet without variances. I mean, that's the law. I mean, as an administrative body, we can't interpret the law, we can't change the law, we can't modify it. Our requirement
Right.
is to administer it as written. I'm not saying, Richard, what you're saying isn't true, that it might be of greater benefit to do that. But the way the law is written,
Right, so fortunately, we have a zoning board that takes care of the oversized house, which is not our concern. If they approve it, it's no longer an issue. So they approved a house that's a couple thousand foot larger, just like they did up on the hill 2 months ago.
Mhm.
So I have a 5,000 square foot house up here that they just approved. So if they approve it, they approve it. If they don't, they don't. It's really not our concern.
it's our concern to the extent that the law requires us to give them a recommendation on any area or use variance that comes before them. So that makes it our concern legally. That's in the zoning law. We are
Okay.
they're required to refer it to us, so we have to.
Okay.
So, we'll see you Wednesday night. Is there anything else anyone wants to discuss tonight? Could I hear a motion to... Second.
Second.
All in favor? We stand adjourned at...
Ooh,
It's a record.
6:58.
Definitely a personal best. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
And you